At the center of all love I stand, and from that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and throughout the world. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Attracting Financial Resources to the Work of the Hierarchy, for the Work of the Hierarchy meditation. And I'll be substituting for Tuya. She's doing a lot of driving, a lot of moving around up there north of the Arctic Circle, and there are no blizzards quite yet. They'll be coming along. Well, our work is at first here in the book, The Problems of Humanity. And there is this particular chapter on capital and labor. And though written long ago, it somehow really carries a vision of how money should be used, and in so many cases, how it is not used. It's the crux of the problem, and people are astonished when, we say, or the Tibetan says, well, the Christ needs money to reach the needy sons of men. But thus it is, and by human hands and human feet will the new age be built, and not because some conquering hero, appears on a white horse. That's the That's the old version of the all-powerful Savior, and then we do not take our responsibility. So the astrologer Dane Rudyard said the Aquarian age would be the age of management, the age of responsibility. And since the first 720 years of that age will be ruled by the planet of responsibility, which is Saturn, well, we can see what lies before us. So I'm just going to switch over here to the place where we left this last time. DK had talked about capital and the rise of the labor unions, but had ended on page 77 with the statement that the labor movement itself had now become capitalistic. And there were, self-seeking labor leaders, and some of the original idealism which caused the hierarchy to support that movement had dissipated somewhat. Yet overall, as he says here, labor and the labor unions have done noble work. And when you hear a word like noble, you immediately think of the soul. And they've received some pretty harsh punishment lately. You know, we've had some of our leaders, I can't really say how it is in some other countries, but in the United States there has been the attempt, even for 40 years, to weaken the labor unions. This principle of sharing is so absolutely important, and in order for it to exist, love has to exist, and respect for the other person and the other group, no matter where they may be on the ladder of evolution. Perhaps they know even more in certain ways than those who control the capital. So there's a lot to work out in right human relations before proper sharing can occur. And it must occur, along with a measure of peace and the house cleaning, before the Christ can dare to reappear to humanity. So labor and the labor unions have done noble work. It says labor has been elevated into its rightful place in the life of all the nations, and this is important here, the essential dignity of man has been emphasized. I don't know if you've read some of the books about the conditions in the 19th century when the robber barons had full sway, and it was considered Darwinian, social Darwinism was considered to be a fact, and the capable would rise and the incapable would fall. And there was very little compassion to be seen. It was the Scrooge story on a Christmas Carol, but then you saw that Scrooge turned around, and in a way things had built up so powerfully against his soul that there was a breakthrough. And the way he behaved from that time on made it seem that he had taken the first initiation, and that the Christ principle was alive in his heart. I'm always moved by that story. Dickens really had a tremendous insight into the human heart and into the relationship between love and money. So humanity is being rapidly fused into one great corporate body under the influence of the law of supply and of demand, which is a point to be remembered. So these are the balancing factors that we have to attend to in a ethical and moral manner, making sure that every human being has his or her basic needs met. The destiny of the race and the power to make national and international decisions affecting the whole of mankind is passing into the hands of the masses. This we see happening. We see happening right now, and we see a last-ditch fight on the part of the materialistic forces and, the so-called 1% that owns most of everything. But gradually, a real planetary democracy will be emerging, and actually, we don't have so long to wait. We see the pressure on it right now, and that's why we see so many of these capitalistic but selfish forces. There are capitalistic benevolent forces, okay, but capitalistic and selfish forces counteracting the trend toward democracy, even trying to bury that trend in quasi-dictatorships. Maybe not as bad yet as Hitler or Mussolini, but tending in that direction. So this power to make decisions is passing into the hands of the masses who are being elevated, of the working classes, and of the man in the street. DK likes to use that phrase quite a bit, and really, it's about initiation. Unless you grasp the hand of your brother or sister and go together through that door, you're not going through that door. And that's the great paradox, Can't really go it alone in a selfish attitude. Going on, the inauguration of the labor unions was, in fact, a great spiritual movement, in the Third Ray Ashram, and I think it was under the auspices of a certain English master, leading to the uprising anew of the divine spirit in man and the expression of the spiritual qualities inherent in the race. I mean, you cannot, crush out the masses just because you might have the power to do so. It really is absolutely against the plan. Yet, says the Tibetan, all is not well with the labor movement. So he's just being honest here. And as I say, written 70 years ago. Has so much changed? That's the question. The question arises whether it is not sorely in need of a drastic house cleaning, just the way politics and religion, those groups, are in need of a drastic house cleaning before the Christ can reappear. With the coming in of labor governments in certain countries, with the growth of democracy and the demand for freedom, with the uprising of the rule of the proletariat in Russia, it's kind of a rising up of the Virgo energy, you might say, and the higher educational standard of the race, it might well appear that new, better, and different methods may now be used excuse me, to implement the four freedoms and to ensure right human relations. The four freedoms and the Atlantic Charter and Franklin Roosevelt's attempt there with Winston Churchill to state these 4 messages from Shambhala as much as humanity could understand, and freedom from economic want was one of them, you know, and I don't have it right in front of me, but you know, there's the security of people against armaments, and we'll look it up. I mean, I should know them just off the tip of my tongue, but it's not coming to me. Of course, there's always one way to do it, you know, and this is one way. And there's lots of them, you know, lots of references. Okay, and here's Franklin Roosevelt. A great disciple, says DK. A great disciple. So, here he is saying, no countries, I guess this is the Atlantic Charter. The 8 points of the Atlantic Charter and the 4 freedoms are within here. The freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world, challenged greatly today by despots who say they have the welfare of the country in their mind, but no, they don't. They have their own welfare in their mind. Freedom of speech and expression, freedom of every person to worship God in his own way. Freedom from want, and that's the one we're dealing with right now. And freedom from fear, weapons, armaments, and so forth. So anyway, page 319 of Externalization of the Hierarchy. I feel good somehow reviewing those. Speech and religion had slipped my mind, and they're among the most important to me. Okay, so going on. And there's a growth of democracy, demand for freedom, higher educational standard. Might seem that a new and better method would now be used to implement the 4 freedoms and to ensure right human relations. If there is a realization that there should be right human relations among nations, it is obvious that such relations should exist also between capital and labor, composed as both groups are of human beings, and between, and here he says it directly, the quarreling labor organizations. And now frank words. Labor is today a dictatorship, using threat, fear, and force to gain its ends. Many of the leaders are powerful and ambitious men with a deep love of money and a determination to wield power. Bad housing, poor pay, and evil conditions still exist everywhere, and it is not in every case the fault of the employer. But I don't know, have you been to the documentaries which show the slums in various parts of the world? I'm thinking of, some places in the Far East, and I'm thinking about places in South America where these slums are appearing, and now in North America as well, when that had been somewhat cleaned up. It's really a shame. So power in the future lies in the hands of the masses. These masses are moving forward, and by the sheer weight of their numbers, by their planned thinking and rapidly growing interrelation, now established between labor movements all over the world, nothing today can stop their progress. The major asset which labor has over capital is that it is working for countless millions, while the capitalist works for the good of the few. And I think we see this very much now in the relationship between the highly conflicted parties in the United States, and maybe I think also in the United Kingdom, and I suppose elsewhere as well, with which I'm not so familiar. The norm of humanity lies at the heart of the labor movement, the norm of humanity. So somehow it's with the blue and not with the red. The red is Mars, the blue is Jupiter. The red is sixth ray and the blue is second ray. We need to grasp somewhat this picture excuse me, of a worldwide condition of misery based on both the capitalistic and labor movements, to see this entire picture realistically and fairly. In some form or another, the interplay between capital and labor, between employer and employee, and between the moneyed interests and the exploited masses has been present. With the steam age, Master R being very much involved in that, so the story goes, the scientific age, the age of electricity, and the age of planetary intercommunication, and now we've gone further into the atomic age. This evil grew and spread. Capital became more and more potent. Labor became increasingly restless and demanding. The culminating struggle was presented in the World War and its aftermath, a 30-year war in which capital implemented the war and the efforts of labor won it. What a perspective. And you know, the whole financial thing behind this long war is perhaps not brought to the attention of people sufficiently, but it was very much about the control of the resources of the world. Hitler had that idea, you know. When he looked at a nation to be conquered, he looked at their resources and what could accrue to Germany's coffers, how he would capture those resources and dominate. Well, okay. Now I'm not going to get into these questions until the next time I have the opportunity to read this. And it will be on the 29th of September, if all goes well. Excuse me. SCP, and there it is. Okay, 29th of September, and begin. Whoops, be nice to spell here. Begone is different from begin, isn't it? All right. So, I think we see really the love of money, or the love of the fulfillment of the lower impulses of the desire body, is the root of all evil. So we are told, and I tend to think, you know, that mistaken identity is the root of all evil. If we really knew what we were, and if, like the Christ, we could go beyond any ring past nod and not only be in the other person's aura, as it were, but be the other individual, that would be a type of identification which would end this presence of ignorant evil, and sometimes, of course, very deliberate evil. Okay, friends, so now we'll do a little meditating on this important matter and on our whoopsie, sorry, that was the microphone wanting to hit the floor, but it didn't. Okay. We'll deal with our own responsibility with regard to financial resources. I think the key thing is to realize certain things, and okay, we repeat these certain things, but they really have to have their place in our mind and in our heart. So it's amazing, really, that the secret to the source of supply is sacrifice, and the one who gives receives. Well, it doesn't seem that way sometimes, and thus people grasp. But in our meditative attitude, we ponder a little bit. To those who give all, or to those who give, shall be given, so that they may give again. And to those who give all, as the masters have given all is given. So let us ponder a little on that important principle. Well, you know, I know you'll know this, but there's an old saying that nature abhors a vacuum. And when we give, whatever it is of a positive nature that we're giving, we're creating a vacuum. And there is the attempt to fill that vacuum, then a law, with something even more expansive, so that if this process continues, giving, creation of a vacuum, resupply, and so forth, we find ourselves as a much higher being than at first we thought we were, and much more capable of assisting humanity out of its illusion, glamour, and maya. Now, we allow the light of the soul to penetrate our thinking process. And we ask ourselves these questions. And we answer in our own way internally. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? Second question, what is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? Third question, what is my personal responsibility in regard to money which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? Think about the mythology of this. For millions of years it has been recognized that the acquisitive nature, fulfilling the lower desires of the astral body, lead eventually to no good. It's been dramatized for us by that great initiate dramatist Hercules millions of years ago. And these dramas have survived. So are we having trouble with this head of the Hydra we call the wrong use of financial resources, one of the physical heads of the Hydra? Am I achieving victory over this head, or am I still captured, the way so many are, by this particular misuse of resources? Of course, we know eventually that the Hydra is defeated by the light of the intuition and by lifting it up into the intuitive light where it cannot breathe. The strictly Martian, Plutonic way of confronting the sins of the Hydra heads only goes so far. but at least we have to understand the problem. And how to overcome the problem? By responding with love, by responding to true need, by adopting the sacrificial attitude, and when we have accomplished this in our own nature, we're in a position to help humanity overcome its hydra, which by no means is overcome. So instead of the wrong use of money, we think about the right use. Yes, it is largely used today for purely material purposes for so many, and for the satisfaction of purely personal desires. Yes, that is true. However, it can be seen as a great stream of flowing golden substance, passing out of the darkness, out of the control of the forces of materialism, and into the control of the forces of light, led by the Christ. Out of the dark, out of the materialistic use, abundantly into the hands of the Christ and his masters and their initiates and the disciples and men and women of goodwill of the world. And to help this happen, we can say the following invocative prayer with focused mental attention, concentration, and with the heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demand. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. And then we visualize the work to be done by those groups which claim our present interest and allegiance, any group of which we know that is attempting to carry out at least the hierarchical plan. And as we know, there are many units of service out there, part of the Tibetans' work, that are attempting in their own local headquarters to local area to carry out that part of the plan which has to do with the esoteric work and letting people know about the subjective realities, and more practically perhaps about goodwill and about the light of triangles and the love of triangles. So then by and through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, we see untold and unlimited sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And then we say aloud with conviction and emphasis this meaningful affirmation. He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. And we remember, in the words of the initiate Paul, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So faith puts us in touch with the very thing we are demanding, the very thing whose emergence we are demanding. Now, We get specific, and we ask the needed vast sums, ask money for, and we aloud or inwardly name the projects, the groups, etc., for which we wish to see the money, towards which we wish to see the money flow. And we say, I can demand this because from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. So in your creative imagination, you prepare to give your offering to the great Lord, to the Christ, the Lord Maitreya. And we are as if gathered at the feet of the Avatar of Love, who directs in so many ways the uplift and salvation of humanity. And we give in terms of money and time and however our labor, however we can support the money towards the work of the hierarchy as it attempts to see the divine plan manifest on earth. And to this end we say together, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And we close with a careful responsibility, consideration of our responsibility to the plan. And we plan our weekly financial cooperation with the hierarchy, being practical and realistic, and knowing that if we do not give, we may not ask, for we do not have the right to evoke that which we do not share. So how shall our financial cooperation flow? How shall this happen? attempt to feel true love sweeping through us, and we have the fixed intention to express this love to all whom we may contact. It is the great and attractive and selfless agent in world affairs. And we hope that we can all cooperate rhythmically to give to the most worthy causes that are helping humanity. It will be along 7 different ashramic lines. Obviously, so much of what Master DK does is along the second ray line, and that of the Lord Maitreya and Buddha as well, but every ashram needs contribution. So we sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love and wisdom into the worlds of the threefold personality, our own and that of humanity. Thank you, friends, for meditating with us. And we can do lots of good. We just simply have to continue with regularity, and we will be able to accomplish something for humanity. And of course, we individually will also benefit and be able to serve more effectively. There are many service activities. They started with the Lucis Trust, the Triangles Movement, and the Blue Rose Sisterhood started with Tuya, and it builds up in the nurturing of the Christ life and building in the reality of the Christ consciousness. The Moria Federation, learning our esotericism deeply. We really have to use our minds so we know what we are doing. Meditation, study, and of course, the most powerful of all, really service. The psychological rehabilitation through the rays and astrology and the new esoteric psychology, largely undertaken in our circle by the University of the Seven Rays, of which the Moria Federation is the internet expression. And we write the music, you know. Harold and I have done a lot about that. to put the ageless wisdom teaching into musical form, mostly choral works which carry the ideas. So friends, many blessings, lots of love. If you'll look under the images that are being streamed, you'll see events that are coming up, and those events have to do with understanding our true identity as being, and we're going to be on the morning schedule next week, but on Wednesday we have a busy day. We'll have the science of triangles and also the normal triangles meditation, as well as some new efforts to look into that masterpiece, a treatise on cosmic fire. A book understood only by initiates, we're told, but okay, we can make the attempt, right? And that's on at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, just the way the identifies being at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, and that's GMT. And otherwise, usually at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the evening are when we do our broadcasts. So we hope that you'll be able to attend with us and just copy those words underneath the image, and you'll pretty well have the time when all this is occurring. So we'll say here from Finland, Tuija and I will say good night. It is later here, except if we were in India, it would be still later, so I realize that sometimes a sacrifice needs to be made, and some in the Far East, you're waking up early in the morning. So, okay. We say goodbye for now, and we'll be seeing you in the next few days on these webinars and broadcasts. Bye for now.